Hi, everyone, and welcome to SEO Up Close. Today, I'm happy to be here with Barb Davids, SEO consultant and founder at Compass Digital Strategy. She helps small businesses get more traffic and have more visibility on Google. And today, we're going to be discussing how to create a successful content strategy and talk about all the tips and it's a very important topic for many reasons. SEO, an SEO strategy improves your ROI. It ensures your content supports your goal. It helps you identify what's working so you can refine it as you go. And it also helps keep everyone on the team on the same page, and as well as make sure that you can publish quality content consistently. So let's get started. How would you approach creating a content marketing strategy? Like, you have a client right now and you need to start coming up with a plan. So how would you approach that?
So first thing is usually there's like a list of ideas. If it's not on paper, it's usually in their head. So we'll just sit and take a moment to write them all down. Like, I've kind of got a list going now for my clients, but the first time we work through it, we just sit down and say, okay, well, what do people ask you? What comes across on some of your socials, or what do you want people to know more about your business? So we think about just the ideas list. And then there is, excuse me, sorry, I had a pop up on my face here. Then there's the idea of just keeping a running list all the time, so we can always go back and find things that we want to work with. There's one client that I actually do a quarterly session for just brainstorming, just because she has a lot of content and tangential content. So content that's maybe not specifically about their business, but it happens to resonate with her audience. So we just keep like a really big running list of it, just in a Google sheet. And so we go through that. And then when we're ready to map out the next month or 2 months or 3 months, then we go first to that particular that list to see if there's anything that we want to work with or that has come up quite a bit. And then anything that we maybe just kind of sit and talk about. The interesting thing is that the one client that I have has had so many ideas, and it's gotten quite overwhelming. Like, what do we choose next? Like, what should we write about? What would make sense to do? And so what we ended up creating was a decision matrix type of Excel sheet. So we have up at the top on the Google sheet, like criteria. So is it easy to implement? Is it more towards the bottom of the sales funnel? Is it easy to implement? What were the other ones? I can't remember. There were like 3 or 4 different things that we made some criteria on in terms of helping us make a decision. And then those are all weighted. So they each get a number. And then whichever number of all of those ideas gets the highest, then we work on that one first. So that's been really helpful to try and like not get so overwhelmed with like, oh, what do we write about? What should we do? That kind of thing.
So you sort of attach a value, a number value to each item, so you can evaluate it. That's really good.
Yep. Yeah, it's very helpful, and we don't always follow it, but it's really helpful to kind of narrow down like what we want to do and that kind of thing. And then we plan it out and say, okay, well, also because of like holidays and things like that, or if they have promotions going on. So we try and think about that piece of it. And then we also have like one of my clients, we have like a series of things. So she has 4 blog posts that happen per month. And so we have dedicated 1 blog post per month for that blog series. So it's like, it's one whole content piece. And then the other 3 get attributed to other pieces that she wants to work with. Sometimes it's like a list type thing. So just a helpful, fun, something about like, cause she's in the wedding industry. So it's like maybe types of veils or something like that. And then we have some other ones that talks about something more closer to her service in terms of like where people get married. And then what we do is take those pieces and put a content brief together for the copywriter. So right now I'm using a tool called Content Harmony, which is really, really helpful because I used to do this by hand. What would happen is I'd come up with a content piece and I'd go and take a look at the keyword volume, kind of like what were related keywords, how did we want to target with that particular piece? And to be fair, sometimes we figure out a keyword first that we want to target, and then we put that into the list and we're like, okay, we want to target this keyword in some way, but There's no like formula for like which ones we choose first on that in that particular piece of it. So then I create the content brief. So what I used to do was I would go to Google, type in the keyword or the subject, and then see who ranks for the top 10. And then I would go through each one of those and just basically eyeball them and say, okay, well, what are they doing? What topics are they covering? Does it have video? Does it have this or that? And now I can do it with just Content Harmony, which is really nice. So it pulls all that information for me in one easy way to do it. Like, are they having the same headers? I still go take a look at them because I want to visually see what they have too. But it really cuts down on some of the repetitive stuff that I was doing in terms of like headlines and things like that. So then put that together. The content brief is like the really big piece of it, because if you don't have a very clear direction for the copywriter, then you get crap back. And then you're just going to have to like rewrite it. So those I've found have been super helpful. And then I send it over to the copywriter, and we go through that whole process where they send the proof, and then we do some editing. And then after the first proof is when I send image requests over to the graphic person. So that way they have some time to create it before it gets posted. Some clients, they have that. Some clients, they don't have the graphic artist. So, but that's about when I decide where and how we're going to do the graphics. Sometimes when I'm doing the content brief, I do know like, hey, this would be a good infographic because I know this is like a list. But then sometimes I don't, because it depends on what they say. So some words might be suitable for like maybe just an outstanding quote on the page, or some of them might be better suited for an infographic or some sort of different visual type of piece. So that's when I send it over to the graphic artist. And then, yes, we get that back, and then we publish it. And it takes a good amount of time to publish. Like we can't just up and throw it up there because of formatting and making sure that it works right. And a lot of the times we end up having jump links because a lot of our content is pretty long, and then that just makes it easier for the person to find what they want on the page. And then we have metrics. That's the other piece of it. So we have, most of the time it's blog posts that we're publishing. I know that sometimes, like if you have a podcast, you might want to measure it by subscribers or downloads. So it kind of depends on the content piece. But then we take a look at, are people finding the page? Are they jumping off right away? Are they going to another page? Like just kind of that whole thing. Do they download something at the bottom of the page? So we have calls to action at the bottom of every page. And then on a regular basis, probably like maybe yearly or half a year, well, now it's gotten more to the point where we know which pieces need to be refreshed and when. So we set up the reminder beforehand. So we don't have to go and try and figure out, oh, does anything need to be refreshed? Even though that's probably a good idea too. So, so that's kind of the overview in a lengthy amount of time.
Sounds really, really interesting. So basically what you want to say is that you start with brainstorming, right? And then you sort of plan, add values to it. So you know the order of execution, start executing content briefs, and then at the end you sort of have the matrix to evaluate it. Is that would that describe? Yeah, that's really very. I like the process so much. So how would you ensure, for example, that you have a variety of topics like that address the user at different stages, like a bottom, middle, and top? Like, how would you do that?
So it's kind of funny because we know which each piece does. We know which funnel they're in when we create the piece, but we don't technically do it for each funnel. So for most of my clients, it is informational in terms of their blog content and their goals. But like some of them are further down the line, but we don't do any specific percentage. Like we don't say, okay, this is how many we have to do for bottom of the funnel for the blog post. Like if we had 4 of them, like we have, we don't necessarily target each of the 4 buying stages in each one of those posts. So it does come back to the decision matrix in terms of that. But I think, and I'm trying to remember the pieces, I do believe like one of those is in the decision matrix. Like, is it going to generate revenue? Like, is it a big revenue driver? So that is something that's factored in there. Or maybe it's like the service, like, is it closer to that funnel piece of it? So it does get taken into consideration, but we don't specifically say, okay, we're creating one in this funnel, one in that funnel, or anything like that.
You mean it comes naturally, which is good as well, because then you're sure you're sort of diversifying the content you have. And
Mhm.
what would you say is the most important thing in throughout all this process? Like, what is the most critical stage in all of this? Is it just like, would you say the brainstorming is and having this clear communication with the client, or the part where you do your research, like where you feel this is the most sensitive and most important, that's essential for the success of the process?
Definitely the discussion with the client, so that, I mean, you could know their business, but you're never going to know it as good as theirs. And they see things that you can't see. So like they're actually talking with the customer. So I think that is like the biggest piece of it, and just talking with them and learning what ideas you could use for all of the content. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So you mentioned content refresh. So what is the way you approach that? Like, if you find that this piece of content needs, a facelift, or how would you approach that?
Yeah, I first go to Google and see what's out there again, just to get a sense of what's happening. And sometimes I check forums depending on the topic content, if I think that there might be something interesting. A lot of the time, it's updating stats and or dates. It is something that is inherently going to need refreshing in terms of it's been done something for that particular year. If it's something that is not for that particular year, then I just find ways to think about the content, and I read through it and I say, okay, is there something in this piece that maybe could be elaborated on? Or maybe we missed a part the first time for whatever reason, and that we could add it in. It's not necessarily just changing words, it's trying to just make the piece better for the most part. And then there's also, changing graphics. We could do that as well. Changing the title sometimes. It really, it varies from piece to piece. We have this one content piece that is very much date driven, and for the client, and we did it for 2020, 2019 for each year. And now we've done it because it's about weddings, and people are scheduling so far out for weddings. We made the piece not just 1 year, but it talked about 4 years, just because people are going out so much. So it was really that one was really based on like what's happening right now. It wasn't just a refresh. It's because like the environment changed.
Yeah, yeah, you're definitely right. Especially with seasonal content, as you mentioned, and sometimes things change. So, you come across any situation where you had to integrate COVID topics into your content, like, because it was, last year it was all COVID. So, and it was,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was really tough for a lot of small businesses. So, do you think there was an opportunity to, integrate that into the content strategy?
Yeah, there definitely was. So a couple of my clients, they kind of just left because they didn't have any customers, like, so they couldn't do any marketing. There was just nothing because they were in the travel industry.
Yeah.
And then a couple of my other ones sort of changed their content. So one in particular is a flower shop. And so we had already planned out the content, and then we stopped and we're like, okay, well, what can we do instead? And it was right around Earth Day, and it was April, so things were closed down. So we just changed the content to be not just about events, but what can you do at home for Earth Day? So the context of the article did have to change. And then the other client that I had done some work with, the wedding person. So that one went even larger because people were afraid to get married. And even though you could still get married where they're based in Las Vegas, because they were outside, except for that part where I think you couldn't even get licenses at all. So there was a period of time where you couldn't even get married at all. But for the most part, you could come to this place because it was outside. You could get married outside. So what we ended up doing was tackling some of the COVID questions that people had. So what would you do? And more so from her standpoint, because she kept getting questions too about like, well, what if I can't get out there? What if I can't travel or something happens? Like what happens with the down payment I made? So they had all kinds of questions about things that they had already inquired about. But then we learned that there were a lot of people that were asking about like, well, what about wedding insurance? Or where can I go to get married when it's so locked down still for most of the United States. So we did create content around all of those questions.
I really like the flexibility, like being and catching up with the speed, like and that's the trend, a trending topic, and that's impacting everyone's life. And you were able to integrate, like with the
Mhm.
one with the Earth Day. I really like that, because at that I do remember at April everyone was searching how to do stuff at home, right? Because we're all
Mhm. Yeah.
like locked down. So yeah, I really like how not just stopped and there's nothing we can do. Like I like how you
Mhm.
were very flexible and tried to also answer a lot of new questions that the circumstances made, like about COVID and weddings. And it's really
Mhm.
important. What I see is that it's important for anyone who's creating a content strategy to have this flexibility and understanding of the seasonality and the whatever is trending, and how it have to impact what their plan, because it doesn't make sense sometimes to go with what you have planned before everything changed.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yep. That's really really great examples. One final thing is that what would you say, like, do you have an example of like a success story, or a specific piece of content that you feel like did performed the way you really wanted it to or expected it to?
Yeah, I've had a number of those things. I wish I didn't have the numbers with me. Sorry, but I have a couple of things that it was interesting to me. So we wrote some blog posts for the flower shop, and it's very locally driven, right? You can't deliver. I mean, you can deliver flowers across the nation. What am I thinking? There's like the 1-800-Flowers and all that kind of stuff, but it's locally, so they just deliver local. So we created some blog posts, and it went really crazy actually. So he gets like just a ton of traffic on it. But the interesting thing is you can't really localize it. So you can't say, well, only people in Vegas can take a look at this content.
Yeah.
It ended up working so well that we get a ton of content, but it's also a lot of traffic that we kind of just throw out of our analytics because they're not really relevant. Like they literally land on the blog article and then they leave. And most of them are from outside of the United States, or a lot of them are. And so they're even further away from his delivery zone. Like we know that piece of it. And since we can't target just Las Vegas, I just thought it was kind of interesting how that worked. But I forget the numbers. I do have it in a blog post somewhere
It's really
because
interesting that a piece of content performs so well that it goes beyond the audience you
yeah,
intended for initially. Like that's really very very shows a very 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 good work, like awesome.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so I have the numbers somewhere, but he wasn't doing much blog posting, and typically content marketing I think does surround blog posting, but it's not the only thing. I think that people remember that content is also like your emails and it's your podcast and it's your videos and your presentations, but it kind of does go a lot with blogs. He wasn't doing many blogs, and it was actually back where people were still kind of just blogging to blog, like they thought just any content could be up there, write about what you ate in the morning. Not this, he didn't do that, but that's the stuff that was up there. But and I think a lot of businesses forget that it's not just about their business. So putting up a blog post about employee of the month is great, like that's very fantastic, but you also have to put up stuff that people are searching for in order to get people to get to your website. So think about the audience more. And I don't know if it's just that it's hard. Sometimes I think it's a matter of bandwidth. So they just put up what they can about their business. But yeah, so he wasn't doing as many blog posts at the time. And then we started going just to one a month. And his traffic just went up. It was just crazy how much the targeted thinking about like what to put up there and targeting specific keywords and things like that really made a huge difference.
I'm really happy that you mentioned this, because many small business owners think, SEO and content marketing and that sort of thing is like very thing that they cannot do, or it's too complicated or a lot of work. But there is an example that you just mentioned, like one blog post that's well researched and optimized once per month can actually move the needle and change
Mhm.
things, right? And that is really really, and I really want to share this, like and I hope whoever is watching, they would know that, because I've been talking to a lot of small business owners, and what I see is lack of resources, as you mentioned, is something that who's going to write this? We don't have a lot of time for this. But even if the owner would volunteer, or any of their team, okay, that we're going to write that, we're going to be helping you in execution. But one piece of content, a good piece of content per month, is even a very good step towards achieving more than they can imagine, right? Like, it's not, do not, what I want to say is that they shouldn't underestimate the power of consistency, obviously, and a well planned content.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Yep. I'm so happy to have this chat with you, Barb, and it was really, really interesting. And I'll definitely meet with you again.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming today.
sure. Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Thank you.